From MNT-EC, the Micro Nano Technology Education Center, this is Talking Technicians, the podcast about technicians, who they are, what they do, and where they come from. I'm your host, Peter Kazarnoff. I teach technicians and engineers at Portland Community College. In each episode, you'll meet a working technician and hear their story. That means real interviews with real technicians about real jobs. At the end of each episode, you'll hear actions you can take if you want to be a technician too. In this episode, you'll meet Lincoln. Lincoln is a field service engineer at Intel in Hillsboro, Oregon, outside Portland. Lincoln, welcome to Talking Technicians.
Thanks, Peter. I'm glad to be here.
So, Lincoln, tell me a little bit about yourself. You work at Intel in Hillsboro, Oregon, which is outside Portland. Where do you live and how long have you been there for?
I currently live in Beaverton, and I'm actually from the Portland area, so I've lived in and out of Portland and Beaverton pretty much growing up my whole life.
So you grew up in the Portland area. Beaverton is a suburb of Portland, and now you're working at Hillsboro, another suburb of Portland. So tell me about where you work and what your job title is. How would you explain your job title as a field service engineer?
Sure, I'd be glad to. So I'm a field service engineer. I work on the semiconductor tools that Intel uses that they use to make their Microsoft computer chips. And so day to day, we do routine maintenance and deal with any disasters as they might come, put out fires, as you would say.
So you're doing some routine maintenance, and then when there are problems cropping up, then you've got to deal with those. So what would you kind of say your day-to-day is at work? When you go in the first thing, what's kind of the first things you do? What do you do in the middle, and then what's at the very end?
So first thing of the day is we go and we have typically a scheduled work items. So we will go through whatever PMs that need to be done or modifications that the tool owners are doing with their equipment. And then we execute the plan. So we come up with a plan with the team. If there's any support that's needed, I contact my support team. And we go through our manuals and our blueprints and we come up with safety strategies. And then we get to work throughout the day. We are dealing with high voltage over, 280 volts easy up to 1,000 volts, I believe, is where they're at. Hazardous chemical, caustics, acids. So, real deal business. It's a good time. So the beginning of the day, we just kind of lay out our plan, and in the middle, we're just executing all day until we complete it.
And Lincoln, do you work in a shift or do you work in a regular 9-to-5 schedule?
I work on a compact work schedule. So it's 3 days 1 week, and the next week it's 4 days, and these are 12-hour shifts.
And do you work with a bunch of other technicians or also work with technicians, engineers, PhD researchers, and business people as well?
All of the above. Not so much many business people, but we work with hands-on with engineers, people, all different types of levels of engineers, PhDs. I work right next to my left and my right. People have bachelor degrees or 17 years worth of experience, and then above me, I have support teams that have doctorates. There's a lot of money around the equipment and the tools to make sure that stuff is run. It's like the pro sports of semiconductors.
So, Lincoln, you mentioned that you do some PM and that you work on tools. For folks that don't work in the semiconductor industry, what's PM? And when you say tool, what do you mean? Is that like a hammer?
Sure. Yeah, that needs a little explaining. Sure. So, just PMs are preventative maintenance. So, a good example, and that goes right into your next question. A tool is what these semiconductor companies call their equipment. So, it's a big machine. It's a piece of machinery. They just call it a tool. So, it's not like a hammer. It's a giant. It's like the size of a small garage, and it has robots in there, and it moves to different modules to do whatever, and there are different varieties of tools. My particular ones that I work on, we work on the clean track. So what this tool's job is it's cleaning and prepping the wafers and the masks to their next step. It's cleaning off some caustic. I think now keep in mind, most of this stuff is, contained information. So this is, these are secret, these are Intel secrets that they don't let the public know, like what their recipes or even their steps are. So, in this business, and this is very common for this field, you won't necessarily know what the tool right before its job was per se. So you're just kind of isolated on ours, but that's fine. Anyway, so the purpose of this tool is it's a giant robot moving through modules, and there are a number of things that go wrong, from error codes to air pressure levels going off, mechanical issues, electrical issues, just a million things that could go wrong with this guy.
So that means you work on these large machines the size of garages or big trucks that are inside a factory that makes microchips. That sounds pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's a really good time. It is. It is. And if the viewers wanted like to see it, you can just YouTube in FAB, the fabs at Intel in Hillsboro, and they give you a good idea of what these tools look like, what the kind of machinery does. It's pretty impressive.
Lincoln, can you provide a ballpark salary for a job like yours in the semiconductor industry?
Sure. As a field service engineer, you're right around 65,000 a year net. And if you're a technician right before this one, probably about like 50 to 55 or so. They range from if you're I came in as a tech.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So, are there opportunities for professional growth? And what did you do before you were a field service engineer?
Oh, sure, heck yeah. So, right when I got graduated from PCC, I immediately got a job with Lam, which is it's funny, they build the tools that Intel uses, for different customers. Anyway, so I was there, and that's what was my first job outside of college with this degree. Was the electrical technician job, a testing position where we built these tools, and we would test them out, see, make sure the robot does its motions correctly, zero in all the movements that need to happen, make sure everything works for these tools are like $15 million each. It's got to be nice. So that was my immediate job after, and that was at we were making right about $27 an hour is what I would ask going into that field, 25 to 27. You know what I mean? That's a good asking. At least that's what they were offering at the time. And this was last year. And then to be the field service engineer, that was kind of a win for me. I worked, I did the technician job for a year, and I just applied for this position with Tel, who I'm with now, which is just services Intel. That's how I work at Intel. And yeah, that was going for 35 or so an hour. So that's what people can hope. That was kind of the one that I wanted, and I was able to. But the other job was actually pretty decent as well. Anyway, so that's what we do now.
So, Lincoln, for folks that don't work in large semiconductor fabs, which are large semiconductor foundries, you mentioned that some folks will work for another company like TEL, which is Tokyo Electron, but they'll still be working in the Intel factory. Can you explain a little bit about how that works?
Absolutely. So I mean, again, these tools are very expensive. So what Intel does to help these, they don't just buy the expensive product. They have the technicians from the company that sold it to them specifically work on it, so that they have somebody that we can work hand in hand with to make sure it runs properly. They have their engineers and we have ours, and we come together and we service the tool for them. I guess a good way of saying it, yeah, they want to make an investment, and they want to make sure the company, the people that built it, can make sure it runs, properly. So it's really good collaboration.
Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, does that mean that TEL Tokyo Electron is the one that writes your paycheck, even though you go in day to day to the
Correct.
Intel factory? Neat. So Lincoln,
yep, that's correct. Yep.
What did it feel like your first day of work going into Intel? You came from a supplier company, Lam, doing some testing, and then you went into the semiconductor fab, the semiconductor factory. What did it feel like going in there for the first time?
Oh, it felt great. I tell you, I was just it was the position that I wanted, and I got it. So it was really great, and it's been great. Um, it was similar to it's just my previous job, except for with you're on your own, kind of. You have a small team, and you're kind of expected to perform in front of customers, and like if you want to go back to a sports analogy, it's game day, So it's a really good feeling, and it really was really helped prepared by what I was able to do with PCC. And to answer your previous question, there's definitely a lot of job opportunities if you want to go left or right or up on these types of these companies and this field. There's there you have to be interested in the in the work, but if you are, there's definitely a lot of places you go. I have contacts now with Intel. There's fabs more open up all over the country. There's plenty of opportunities there.
So, Lincoln, we've talked a little bit about hourly or yearly wages. What about things like benefits, health care, or dental care, or retirement? Are those some of the things that technicians in the semiconductor industry get?
Absolutely. The one thing that the barrier to getting all of those great benefits initially is for a lot of these companies, Intel, Lam, and Tel, all of three of them I experienced. They, for the most part, they hire on as contract workers, and sometimes these contracts can last 1 or 2 years. So eventually, if you can get hired onto these companies, the benefits are there, and they're sweet. They have bonuses, which was something that most hey, they have bonuses. And school paid for is a really appreciative one, and they just because they want to advance their own technicians in their own field. So if you have the motivation, there's a good amount of assistance to go around. One of those I worked with, they even offered an online just courses that you could take for free, like for spreadsheet classes. It was for about a whole list of things. So they're the benefits package is actually pretty competitive. These are probably one of the fields that there's not really a push for, at least in the Northwest, for unions because there isn't necessarily a need to. They do a pretty good job of taking care. Well, it's competitive actually. There's a little bit of a shortage on the engineering side, not as much on the technician side. So, but if you can get hired on, the trick is getting hired on. And one thing about the semiconductor industry is it kind of has ebbs and flows. It rises and shrinks. Kind of like since I've been working in it, I've seen it rise and shrink, and it's kind of rising again. So I've been in it for almost 3 years. So it can fluctuate. But if you can get through those periods and get hired on, yeah, they have some pretty nice benefits at the end.
Thanks, Lincoln. I liked how you described these stepping stones between first being hired on as a contractor and then potentially after that being hired on as a technician. And then there are benefits packages that can go along with being hired over a longer term as a technician. But you could start as that contractor, kind of get your feet wet. So how about we kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about how you got to where you are now? You mentioned that you went to PCC. What's PCC for folks who don't know, and what program and degree did you do?
Sure. PCC is Portland Community College, and I went for their kind of just general EET, Electrical Engineering Technician program. They have more specialized ones like robotics and things of that nature. But I kind of just got more of a general one. And it was funny. It was actually all this came from my idea right before then. I was in the Army. I was a chemical specialist. So I'd gotten out of the Army. I kind of didn't really necessarily want to continue in that field. And I just decided to, give this one a shot at it. I had tried it previously. I just didn't have it didn't work out. This is my second attempt at it. And I just kind of fell into it. It really worked for me. So that's how I got to the idea of getting into that program. And that program, was a green light into the whole industry that I can now, that's probably where I'm going to be at that's all I need to be at.
About how long did it take to finish that EET degree?
Well, for me, it was a little bit longer because I had some prereqs that I had to get in. So it was about 2.5 years. It was 10 terms. I went summer term included. So I just went. So yeah. I tried to get it out done as quickly as possible.
And Lincoln, you mentioned that you came from the military. What was that transition like, going from the military and then enrolling in community college?
Well, I tell you, it was great for me. The GI Bill was really COVID had just happened, so everything was online. But so it was great for me to just kind of take a step back from a very demanding and fast-paced environment to kind of my own schedule, to just kind of make my own schedule around school, keep my expenses low. and just kind of chill out and be the college kid I never got to be. So it was great for me. It was perfect. I just yeah. My military career ended a little soon. I had ended up breaking my foot, and it was like a year-long injury, and I was like So I left with that was still kind of healing. So it kind of worked out for me personally. I had a good transition. I recommend it. If people wanting to do a transition, if you can take some time and get yourself in a couple classes, it pays off.
And you mentioned that you were a chemical specialist in the military. How did some of the things that you learned in the military then help you at community college and in your current role?
100%. So discipline is a great one. It can be a little bit corny when you hear it, but it's one thing to want something, and it's another thing to get it. Here's an example. I had to rely on my bicycle was the one way to keep my expenses low. So that's kind of you had some classes you had to take a lab, and I had to get you know. And when I started working, I still don't have enough money to save up yet. So that's what I was, and I was still taking courses. So that's what the Army did for me. It really just kind of made me, go. I want a dream I can change in my reality, and so that's kind of what that helped me do. And from my current work, being a chemical specialist, I deal with some personal protective equipment. PPE is what I learned from that. I'm the best at it. That's all we dealt with was contamination, contain. Biological. How do you contain it? So when you're dealing with what we deal with now, these sub factories have where all the power stations and chemical stations are housed that supply everything above it. And frequently we're down there, changing pumps and changing this stuff. It's very corrosive, but it's no big deal if you just are comfortable with working safely, that's maybe a very safe and reliably safe, not just coworker but kind of instructor, because now I can help train people in that same way.
Yeah, that sounds great that you were able to transfer some of those skills and some of those experiences. And that also gave you both this level of comfort and possibly an ability to talk with other technicians so that they can learn some of the things that you learned. So, Lincoln, how did your life change when you became a technician? What's different once you got your job at Lamb compared to when you were a student?
Oh man, well, it's kind of just the realization of the plan coming to fruition. I didn't know what to expect when I was in school. I'll admit. There were a couple of different jobs I was applying for. Um, uh, what was it? Blue Origin. Jeff Bezos' space company. That's one I had interviewed for. It was like 5 levels of interviews, and I like failed the last one. And I was like, ah. So I was really excited about these different companies that I was interviewing for, and I was excited. I could see doors opening for me there at the end. Because you're getting these interviews. Maybe I didn't get all of them, but it's really exciting technology because it's not just the semiconductor industry that I thought about. There's Blue Origin. There's I don't know if you I didn't know this until I got into this industry, but there's this renewable battery technology company out here in the Northwest. There's a lot of interesting things in here in the Northwest that are have to do with electronics. So it was really exciting for me. And so when I finally got the job, it was really perfect for me. It's some people like to do a little more on the coding side, and I don't mind it for sure. But what we do is much more like hardware. So instead, I'm not programming any chips. I'm just replacing the whole module. You know what I mean? Like just take the whole computer out and a whole new one. So I really, really, I've fallen for it. And I've got to mention the number one thing that these jobs offer isn't just the pay or the benefits. It's the work life schedule, that compact schedule. I mean, there's nothing like I'm just coming. I'm in 4 days off right now. It's Wednesday. I go back to work Thursday. I only work Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You know, yeah. That's been the biggest change. I was a working. I'm getting lazy. I got to do stuff. That's the biggest problem.
So,
So it's a
Lincoln,
good problem to have.
it sounds like the Portland Community College program opened a couple of different options for you, and that you eventually chose to work in the semiconductor industry. But now it also sounds like after that first job at Lamb, that also opened up other options for you afterwards. So, what advice would you give current
Absolutely.
students or people who want to transition careers and work in the semiconductor industry like you do?
That work life schedule I was mentioning, it's really something to consider. I can't go back to the 5 day work week, I tell you, unless it's overtime. Um, Besides that, it's once you get past the first year of the EET program, the math is pretty much over. You're just dealing with theories and stuff like that. It takes some hard work to get there. But there's some good reward in it, and gosh darn it, it's a budding industry. It's a good working field. And I would say to some people that even if you just want a transition, even if you're doing fine where you're at, but it's just kind of not really grabbing you that much. This is kind of there's plenty of entry level positions that do the same thing, but they don't give you 4 days off a week. Like. So if you just want something to do, it's a really great. For me, it's a platform of security that I can stand up on and view other opportunities. Those opportunities are still there. Those renewable battery companies I wanted to get into are still there. My resume is just going. Even just working as a technician, working on these types of tools in the semiconductor industry specifically, it's very transferable. That it is, but you have to still apply yourself. But the point is that they are respected on a resume, is my point from that.
So, Lincoln, do you have a final call to action for students or people who want to transition their careers? And is the semiconductor industry, at least in the Pacific Northwest, growing right now?
It is growing right now. It just coming from a slump, but things are starting to open back up. And they're opening up in the Northwest, and they're also going to be opening up nationwide. So if you're planning 2 years out, might be how long it take you to get to your degree. It's definitely going to be coming up. I would bet money on it. Do it. Call to action. If you're feeling it, at least check it out. Electronics, it's super fun. I used to think it was magic, and now I'm convinced it's magic.
Well, Lincoln, thank you so much for sharing your story with me and talking about your work as a technician in the semiconductor industry.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Please keep in touch. Talking Technicians is produced by MNT-EC, the Micro Nano Technology Education Center, through financial support from the National Science Foundation's Advanced Technological Education Grant Program. Opinions expressed on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the National Science Foundation. Join the conversation. If you are a working technician or know someone who is, reach out to us at info@talkingtechnicians.org. We're always looking out for great guests to share more stories with you.